That's another interesting thing about the immersion is you have no idea what to connect with people on when you're not in your own pop culture,
right?
Using your own metaphors.
You're upside down.
But it's amazing because you realize we have a lot to connect on, but it's all the stuff that I think is boring. It's like what is manhood? You can relate to someone on that level. Mm-hmm. Or what is courage? Anyone who's anyone understands the concept of courage.
That's right. Hello and welcome to Why Are We Talking About Rabbits? The Immersion Ship series. That's this podcast. Today we dig into a particular concept employed by us at First Things. That's a type of living and learning we call immersion ship. Something like letting go. Something like being turned upside down using intuition to figure out deep underwater what the heck's going on. This is what happens to people when we put them in country and ask them to imbibe the culture. So, welcome to the Immersion series on Watar. Today, we look at the flow and what happens when you become a First Things Foundation field worker, and we talk with Daniel Padrnos, your very own First Things Foundation, Daniel Padrnos. So, some epistemology today done lightly on Watar. So, here we are, man. We see a lot of each other. Now we're doing this pod because you're one of these people who did this immersion ship. So let's just talk about it again. Let's do the premise and then we'll start talking. This is Daniel Padrnos. Daniel Padrnos has done this thing. So this is the immersion ship series. Welcome, guys. This is a podcast about when you jump in the water and you get turned upside down. And that's what we do on purpose. At First Things. That's what Navy SEALs do. That's what a good office does to you when you get there and you're their secretary. They turn you upside down so that you can immerse in something like their culture. And so the question for us in this series is, what does that mean? What are the benefits of it? And why should we embrace it? Why should we embrace feeling out of sorts, in pain, and struggling? Why should that be something we embrace? And then our people that we bring on to talk about this will talk about how it benefited them, even though it hurt them at times. So this is this, Daniel, would you say this is the anti-safe space podcast?
There are no safe spaces here.
We're like trying to actually talk about why we shouldn't have a safe space.
Yeah. Yeah. With the proper context. Because right. You don't want to. You don't just go to an unsafe space for the sake of going to an unsafe space.
Right.
That's not productive. Can we do this really quick?
Yes.
Because this is episode 100. Can we remind? Let me ask you a question. How often do people ask you why the podcast is named Why Are We Talking About Rabbits?
A lot.
How often do you actually say what that means?
Almost zero.
Can we do it right now? Do you remember? Do you know why?
I know exactly why.
You do?
Yeah, I was explaining it last night, actually.
Okay.
At a KP dinner.
Let's do it really quick, can we? Because it's episode 100.
Would you like... By the way, episode 100, Andrew, music or like a cheering crowd. Can we do that? Woo! Look at all the people listening are like, gosh, they have these lame...
How did they make it this far?
So, you want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, why are we talking about rabbits?
Why? So, we were making this podcast, remember that? And I think I just returned from a trip to Georgia.
Georgian Republic, yeah.
Yeah. And I was telling you this story as we were forming the podcast about how most nights you're in Georgia, you're having a KP, and it can be as casual or as formal as possible.
I haven't told this story for like 2 years.
It's been since like episode 1. We got to remind people.
Okay, good.
So we're having a KP. It's me and Zviad. In a KP, you can have like 3 people, and it's fine. Yeah, yeah. You have Cha-Cha, and my friend was visiting from the States.
Cha-Cha is moonshine, essentially, but really good, delicious moonshine.
It's okay.
You don't like Cha-Cha?
It's just rocket fuel.
No, but it tastes good. All right, go ahead.
So I'm standing there with Zviad, with Cha-Cha in my hands. Zviad is Cha-Cha, and my friend from the States is visiting, right? And we're, toasting, but it's very casual, very casual. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of a pause in the conversation. You know how Americans try to fill space
Yeah, I do that. I do that. I want to apologize for that.
Yeah. Is that what your podcast is? Filling space in the internet?
I blame my mother.
So he's trying to fill space.
By the way, that's true. You can think of the podcast as I hit record and there's just space.
just babble.
All right, go ahead. Whatever.
So my friend, he's like looking around. I think he's getting uncomfortable. And he's like, so he tries to fill space with my friend Zviad. He's like, Zviad, a frog in America says ribbit, like ribbit. And I've traveled to Russia, says my friend. He's like, in Russia, they say, I don't remember, skra.
Right.
He's like, what do frogs say in Georgia? Like, what's the sound that the frogs make? And my friend Zviad looks at me and he goes, Daniel, why are we talking about ribbit?
This is right.
And I told you that story.
I love this story.
And so that's what it is. It's like the Georgian, we talk about the KB all the time on this podcast.
All the time.
But it's not, I think Georgians recognize the power of words, the power of logos in a way that we don't. And so your heavy things lightly is like everyone's either going too heavy or they're just throwing away their words.
That's right.
So what's the in between space? Heavy things lightly.
Yeah. And to add to that, I always say the rabbit on the internet is also the thing that we chase around, which actually is the thing of less meaning, right? Than say the mother or the father of the rabbit that was born. Like we should actually talk about the origins of these ideas in a way that's deep. And so why are we talking about rabbits has this double meaning, right? One is slow down and like Zviad was saying, slow down, be at peace, have a drink, don't worry. Secondly, that's the light part. The heavy part is dig down on the good stuff. That's what happens at the super table.
Yeah.
If you look at the themes that are being offered by these Georgians at this traditional dinner that we do all the time at the restaurant, they're not like the New York Jets lost last night. They're heavy stuff, but they do it the way you described. Like, why are we talking about ribbits? Yeah. So yeah, guys, that's important to remember. That's what we're doing, right? And now we've done 100.
Yeah. So could we actually start with the KP? Can we get into that a little bit in terms of the immersion, in terms of jumping into the deep end?
Okay, so let me do a formal thing. This is Daniel Padrnos. He's the executive field director of First Things Foundation. You've done a number of things in the last 3 or 4 years that are profoundly immersive.
Yeah.
Start a restaurant, profoundly immersive. You went to Sierra Leone, learned Creole and Mende, profoundly immersive. And you did projects with people who, let's just put it this way, they're on the fringes of what we call modern society. And so immersive. So that's why you're here. And that's what we're trying to talk about in this series. But yeah, go ahead. What do you want to talk about?
I'll ask you questions too. I don't know.
No, we go back and forth.
Immersed in your life.
Well, just marriage, which you haven't done.
I haven't done. I hear a lot from you about
talking about being upside down. Yeah. Do you get scared as a single person that marriage is just some sort of torture chamber? It's not.
I do.
You do, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of that talk.
Why though? Wait, because it's true. Or the torture is like if you're sweating it out. Okay, let me put it this way. You play basketball. You hit a famous shot. Like you won like regionals or something. Okay. Your dad told me all about it.
So
it's on video of like a half-court shot, and then you were like a champion. I think they carried you. I think it was a Disney movie.
No, stop.
I think it was. Are you Zac Efron?
Disney movie.
You're Zac Efron.
17 again.
So anyway, if you're sweating it out and you're running these rat races and you're sweating it out and it sucks, that's a torture chamber of sorts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You put yourself in that. And that's what I'm talking about with marriage. You chose to enter it.
Right.
I think you think you chose to enter a lifelong limousine on the way to the wedding ceremony. I think everyone thinks the limousine just keeps driving for the next 40 years. Like, no, you get out of the limousine, the party's over, and then you live.
Right.
And it's a sweatbox on some level.
Yeah.
Then that scares you.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
Why do the sweatbox of marriage?
I think it's for the reason that we're doing this series. When I get turned upside down, when I have to fix, I mean, it happened literally just yesterday where I was looking at one thing about the restaurant. My wife attended a Supra last night, a KP. And she saw one thing, she saw the dinner one way that was quite complimentary and nice. But I didn't see it that way, and we got into a fight. Not a fight, guys. Whatever, the thing. We got into marriage, and I said that was less important than this, and it happened to be with the heat in the place. It's too hot. But she was seeing something real that I did not want to embrace because I wanted her to embrace my perspective, which is like a thumbs up, way to go, we're the best. And if I did that from 26 or 29 when I got married until 55 right now, if I just did thumbs up, way to go, I'm the best, and there was no wife around, that's a really jacked up. What life did I just lead? Yeah. That's nuts.
Or what if you just did thumbs up while your wife is around?
We just fight all the time. It would be over.
No, you would just dissolve.
Yeah, we couldn't.
We couldn't. You're like, no, you're right about everything, right?
Yeah, we could.
The fight is necessary.
It's right. It's not. Now, the problem is people hear fight in 2022 in diverse, quote, I don't know, happy America, where everyone's trying to become happy. They hear fight as unhappy. I think that's the same way that you can't. Do you think that's why the UFC and bloody boxing has become so popular in the sense that it's like an outlet where people actually return to something like their normal human man self?
I think so. Something like that.
I mean, you do that, right? I mean,
I don't do MMA.
You're not on TV, but
no.
You do jiu-jitsu.
I like jiu-jitsu.
Is it a refuge, even though you're getting your arm like torn off?
I think that is an aspect of the extremes of our culture. There's so much comfort being shoved down your throat. And like the baseline understanding is that you're an American. You should be happy. You should be content. If life is hard, then something's wrong with life. Right. And I think people run to challenges. People run to the Marine Corps because they have this intuition. Like anyone who grows up with suffering. And you're like, how do I deal with the suffering?
Right.
My culture has no way of explaining if this can be redeemed, if this has any purpose at all, if it's just nihil. Wow. So I think people run to suffering in a way to try to figure it out.
So your service in West Africa was first things. Was it? I know you. It was part of that. Mm-hmm. Right? You went into the Upside Down, which, by the way, it's very ironic, right? The movie Fight Club was made. Stranger Things is about this upside down world. And there is this weird desire for something like the hard stuff. So let me ask you, you got it. You got the hard stuff. I mean, there were times, like, tell us about some times when the immersion was really, really upside down.
Could we do this?
Yeah.
Because, like, I think in marriage, you were saying you get hard stuff and then you just can't, like, it's unresolved and people get divorced. It's like, the unique thing about First Things is that there's hard stuff, the hardest stuff. I mean, it's insane. How much confusion you have.
What did Ozzy just have? Ozzy just had he had
You mean Gabriel?
No, Ozzy had it when he was in West Africa. He had not tuberculosis. What did he get? No, typhoid.
Yeah, had typhoid. Don't drink the swamp.
Wait, you had typhoid too?
I don't know. Maybe. How do you test?
Yeah, that's a problem.
But here, the unique thing about First Things, and we'll get into immersion, the unique thing about First Things is that there's already a precedent. There's a purpose for the sacrifice that you make. Right? There's an understanding that you're making a sacrifice, of course, for some sort of growth and personal development, but also for the sake of other people. And so in marriage, you're making a sacrifice.
That's right.
You're setting aside your dumb ideas or your pride,
your singleness
for working that for your wife. And so when you trained us to go to West Africa, if there had been no understanding that the sacrifices that you make, the upside downness will be for the purpose of being able to connect with people and build and understand yourself in a deeper way, then man, you just get lost. You get really lost. And I think see that
there's no reason to be there at that point.
Right.
Wow.
But I have a question for you, because you did Peace Corps in Mali. Mm-hmm. How many people just got flipped upside down and just like twirled out of control because there was no precedent?
Wow. So there was two types of twirls. I like that question because you saw two types of people. And then there was a third, but the first type of person, when they got immersed, now You're talking Peace Corps. Peace Corps does it right. We went to some pretty hardcore places in West Africa, in Mali. The first person rebels against the twist, goes deeper into their Americanism, puts on a pair of boots and an American hat, and just goes straight to the rational project building phase. They're like, I don't want to know about your language. I don't know about this, but you guys have dirty water and I'm going to fix it. They're like a fixer-upper guy.
They have like their control zone.
The total control zone.
And anything that touches their zone turns into them.
Bingo. Yeah. There is no bleed into the culture. Right. Some of my dearest friends there were just those guys. Right. They would work, go to the city and live American life, and then go back out to the village and like, but they didn't have like best buddies. They just had work. You know what I mean? The other kind, when they got turned upside down, these are the two, what I would call the two unhealthy extremes. I don't think that was healthy when people did that. The other one, and by the way, I could be wrong. The other twist, and you saw this too, is some of these cats will go all the way to the end.
That's you.
That was more me. Put on boo-boos and start like learning all the Arabic that was proper for the mosque because we were in a Muslim country. They would just adopt every aspect of the culture possible and start to dislike Americans. Like literally, like we would sit around and go, look at this effing American. But we were that. So we were trying to lose ourselves. I was definitely on that end, which included deep, deep language because the language was the proof that you weren't an American. So the deeper you got into language, the more that the Malians would accept you and the more you could find shelter in their culture, right? I think there's a proper balance between the two.
Can we name it?
The proper balance?
I just gave a talk on this.
Yeah.
I think the proper balance is hospitality done properly.
What do you mean by that?
Hospitality is something like the KP table. It's the outside meeting the inside properly.
Right.
So you're an outsider going to Mali and you have two choices. You can either be indifferent and just be like, well, screw this. I'm making this place American.
Right.
Or you can become Mali, which is dangerous in and of itself.
Totally dangerous.
So I think hospitality is somewhere in the middle where another way to put it, someone knocks on your door, right? If you go to the left hand, you just say, no, stay outside. You're just not hospitable at all. But then there is another extreme. Bring them in, I don't know, chain them to your table.
Take them up to your bedroom and show them around.
Spoon feed that. You can't leave until you recite the Here's Creed.
Right. And totally lose yourself.
Right.
You defile the sacred space in some ways.
Or in a marriage, like you don't turn your wife into you and you don't become your wife. There's an exchange.
And in the exchange, well, this is God became man, so man can become God. This is St. Basil, right? Or is that Athanasius, actually? That's the concept of the proper uniting. Because I don't become God in the truest sense, but I participate in a way, and this is in the Christian East, I participate in a way that I become like God. But I also don't stay perfectly united to my material manhood. I'm supposed to leave that in some ways, right? Not in a Gnostic way, but I am supposed to elevate.
Right. The parts of you that can be redeemed, let's say during baptism, the moment, are flipped, are redeemed. Like your personality isn't diminished or destroyed.
Right.
When you attain theosis.
Right. And in the same way, a proper immersion is gaining yourself. I call it gaining the right side up, but within. So again, the metaphor is you jumped into the water and it was a long jump. In other words, you get so deep in the jump. In other words, you get underwater far enough that you first have to gain your wits. Yeah. Now, if you don't jump from a high enough space, then you don't even go underwater. That's not immersion, right? Immersion is all the way under. Again, this is it has a baptism iconography to it. All the way under, turned upside down, and then you don't shoot right for the top. You stay underwater long enough, open your eyes, and realize there's an ecosystem here. And then you become aware of that. Now, can you breathe under there? I think, now again, the metaphor is sainthood. The saints start to breathe in a place that feels like they should die. That makes my hair stand up. Yeah. Because now they're like, oh, I can be here. Now they're going to go back up because they're mortal. Yeah. But now if they come back up properly after having spent enough time under, they come back up with an awareness of both realities. They know where it was, how life is, where they jumped from, but they also realize that place is not scary. It's real. And now they can see things. They can see, now if I were to walk you up to the shore and say, you know what's under there? Just beauty. You would be like, I ain't jumping in there. But they know.
Yeah.
Because they experienced it.
You know what paradigm that destroys? The grass is greener paradigm.
Because explain that. I think I know where you're going with
Can I do a story?
Yeah.
So there was, I met Father Comby. Do you meet Father Comby in Sierra Leone?
Oh, yeah.
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 He's the one that invited us to Kailahun.
He's a Catholic priest.
And wonderful. He just says it as it is and like has all of these wonderful, rich African parables and stories. And he's Catholic.
He's kind of a hard ass too.
He's a hard ass. Yeah,
totally.
But so a year in, I guess you could say I was really flipped upside down. I had been back to the States once, really excited and like relieved to go back, and it made everything worse. And I was so confused, and I was like, I don't know where I am. Let me go.
Oh, I remember these phone calls.
Yeah, we talked a lot.
Yeah,
but I went back to West Africa. I was like, John's telling me that I don't know that there's a purpose to all this. Let me just give it a try. Like, who knows? I mean, I was confused out of my mind though. And,
you were having a classic moment.
Yeah, and I remember, so Father Comby invited me to Kailahun. Remember, he had these widows groups.
Yeah.
We still work with them.
We work
these
with
co-ops.
them.
Yeah. And all the women saw me, and you know what happens when people who've never seen a white guy see a white guy, or maybe they've heard of them.
Yeah, but they literally have not met Europeans.
Yeah. But they know. I mean, there's a civil war. There's the UN relief, all that aid.
They hear about it.
They're like, this guy. Is his skin money? Like, is this guy just dripping?
A bank walked in.
Yeah, a bank walked in. And man, there were like tears. Like, he introduced me, and I'm just like standing there, and it was just like ripping me with questions, begging me for stuff. I was like, oh my goodness, this is really intense.
I met those same groups, yeah.
And Father Comby, you know, he like made me speak to them, explain what I'm doing there. And I could speak Creole by this time. And he's kind of like, he's letting me sit in the chaos of this. He's kind of just like watching, observing how I'm doing. And then, I don't know, after 15 minutes, he comes to my rescue. And so this is a story that he told. So he said that there was a boy, I've told you this, who was born in Kailahun. And Kailahun's like a farming town, cassava, bananas. I mean,
guys, our work out there is in the sticks. You think like, I don't know, Kentucky's the sticks.
But it's the bread bowl or whatever.
Yeah, bread basket.
It's so bread basket. It's rich. Like, they have like 3 corn seasons.
Like straight jungle, rich.
The joke is, if you drop a phone in the ground, the next day a phone tree will grow.
Phone tree.
But Sierra Leone is known for, if you've seen Blood Diamond, it's known for the minerals. It's known for their,
a rich
it's a mining town.
land.
It's a mining country, but not in Kailahun. And so in Kailahun, it's all farming. And so the story is that this boy was born in Kailahun, very poor. And when he was 8 years old, he saw his family struggling. And so he decided, I want to do well for my family. So he moved to Kono. Kono is the big mining town. About, 10 hours drive.
That's the town you guys all know if you watch the movies. That it's a really important mining town in Sierra Leone.
So he goes to Kono, and he starts digging for diamonds. For years, 10 years goes by, 20 years, 80 years, he dies. He dies in Kono.
He dies in Kono.
He dies in Kono digging for diamonds, doesn't find anything. So his family goes, and they bring him, because in Sierra Leone, you're always buried in the backyard of your father's house. And so they have multiple tombs of all their ancestors. So they brought him back to Kailahun to give him the proper burial. And as they're digging his grave, guess what they hit?
Diamonds.
This massive diamond. Father Comby, and he's telling this parable to these women as they're asking me for all this stuff. He's like, before you ask that white guy for anything, consider what's in your own backyard.
This dude.
So let me tie this in, because the grass is greener idea. I was like, is he telling that to me too? Because,
by the way, yes,
this guy was like in Freetown and things were hard, and I like left the U.S. in some way because I was like, this culture is off. Maybe Sierra Leone is what's up.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Kailahun, and when he told that, I was like, huh. maybe there's something to be said for being turned upside down in water. Maybe there's something there. So,
and can I add something about that? Because we were working together. Dude, I don't know what happened to you, but that actually was manifest in your life, because the dude who was you were about to go home. I think it's fair to say that was one of the options on the table.
My parents wanted me home.
Yeah. Your mom definitely was like, enough of this stuff. That dude who was real and honest and out of your safe space, I didn't see that guy anymore. Now, I'm not trying to say that was a bad person. I'm trying to say that part of you got burned off or something. Now, I think that's the point of this process. Anybody who's been married for any amount of time knows that's what's happening to them. They're leaving the old man on some level, which is, it's proper, I think. Stop right there. Let's cut in a break, and then let's come back in just a second. Okay? On our immersion ship series at Watar. First Things Foundation is scouring the world, and you are a part of the world, for excellent sponsors, folks who want to get the word out about what they do. For a very fair price, become a sponsor of Watar. And in fact, in so doing, you'll be assisting First Things Foundation in developing small projects around the world to serve local communities. Check out our website, www.first-things.org, and give us a call or write us an email if you'd like to be a sponsor. Your ad appears here, and that ad helps us help others. So if you follow the diamond out, the concept is that every person everywhere, even those most isolated and impoverished in this crazy modern world, this colonial world, they have diamonds in their backyard. Is this a self-help message for you? I don't hear it that way. I don't hear it like bootstraps. American, pull yourself up from your bootstraps. The Africans I know in Mali, they do that every day. I don't want to hear about that.
No, it's not that at all.
It's not that, right? It's not like if you would just suck it up.
And you know this. I've never asked you this about Mali. When you greet someone in Sierra Leone, it's couche in Creole, boa in Mende, BCA. And what these things mean is, thank you for your work. That's what they told me. So like, hello is just thank you for your work, John.
Right.
And so I say this because it's just like individualism is so not a part of the culture. It's so foreign to it because they can't even imagine what it's like when like they feel the work of their neighbor happening. If you're a farmer and you're sick for a week, you have malaria, I feel that because suddenly I'm not getting my cassava when I go to the market to buy it from you.
100%.
And if I'm like the village medicine man and I don't know, traveling town, you feel it.
Yeah. And
so when I greet you, I say thank you for your work because I understand that everyone is tied together.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they would definitely, there were phrases that have, usually the way you said, way to go, you're a good person is you're a hard worker. So they'd be like, you and your work. That was one of the phrases. But it didn't mean work. It meant like, oh, this guy's awesome. Any barake, you and your work, dude. But you might have just been drinking palm wine. But the implication is the work was essential. This is what I never understood. This was one of my upside down moments in Mali. When I realized the things I had been taught about the American reality, and by the way, not running it down, but lift yourself up by your bootstraps, achieve something for yourself using your own wits. That always implied something like laziness. The flip side of that was those who don't are lazy, which is a classic red or Republican retort to anything economic, right? But when I got to Mali, what I realized, and when I see Sierra Leone and travel there, and when I went to Mozambique for our new site, which, by the way, we're looking for 2 good field workers to come with us and enjoy and participate in this immersion. But this fall, yeah, guys, we're ready to go. We need 2 good people. But what I saw in Africa was nobody's lazy. You don't see lazy. I mean, you might. It's the classic village idiot. Every now and then you would have one or two guys that just didn't fit in. They were probably mentally ill, what we would call mentally ill. They would call them sort of spiritually infested in Mali. But they were taken care of. Even they were taken care of. But the idea that the flip side of raise yourself up is laziness, that's not a concept.
No.
It's not. Now, were there lazy farmers? Sure, and people would pick on them. I remember one of the guys whose field was always like kind of weak. You know what I mean? They used to say he doesn't have seed. But what they meant is he's impotent. And he doesn't have strong babies. You see, it was all tied in.
Yeah.
They used to make fun of him. His name was Drisa.
Huh.
But Drisa also had the most powerful wife, Umu, in the village. And this is a village of, maybe 150 families. Like, I knew them all. And Drisa would made fun of because he doesn't have seed, dude. But he actually didn't have kids because his wife. Well, can I tell you the story?
Yeah.
I got sidetracked, but I want to get back. Drisa and Umu were my two favorite couple. They were, because they were familiar. They were the most modern looking couple. But I mean, Drisa hadn't even gone to college. I don't even think he'd even gone to high school. Like, these cats were not like what we think of as Western. But Umu was strong in a way that I recognized from American women. And so I gravitated to them, and they would sit and talk with me at night. They were fun. They didn't have kids. And this is a sad story, but it's super interesting. Everyone thought it was Umu that couldn't have kids because that's the way people think. Because there's something barren. Well, it turned out he went and got a test.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he did. And it was him. And guess what happened? He fled. He ran from the village because it was too hard for him to be the one who couldn't have kids.
Wow.
And he became shamed. And they got, quote, they didn't get divorced because that's not really cool. But they broke up, and it broke my heart. I love that couple a lot. But Drisa was seen as sort of weak, but he also was seen as weak in his fields. Like he was. But guess what? That didn't mean he didn't get to eat. That didn't mean that he participated fully. But he was known as that. But if you were to say to him, pull up your bootstraps, otherwise you don't eat, that kind of thing, never. No, that would not be allowed. And I don't know that that's sunk into our culture. I know growing up, I heard bootstraps as some people are lazy and that's why they don't eat. That is not a West African concept. And that's part of the immersion there, is to realize that.
Well, you know the St. Paisio story of what is heaven, what is hell.
Tell us.
It's the same situation. You have people sitting around a table. Hell is when it's kind of a weird story. Everyone has a very long spoon, right?
Oh, I love this story.
And there's a pot of food, and hell is when you try to use the spoon, which is longer than the length of your arm, to eat yourself.
Right.
And you can't. You just never
can't reach it.
And heaven is when everyone's sitting around and they're feeding one another.
That's the answer.
And that's very West African. Like the amount of time I'm talking to Jake and Gabriel all the time, they're like, these people really take care of you. Like if you're sick, and it happened to me all the time. Like these women are like, Daniel, can I bring you some pastas? Can I bring you some food? Do you need medicine?
It's just natural.
And it's not, yeah, they're like, no, why would you say even thank you? Like I'm your neighbor. Like I do that.
So what parts of the culture, so that's an upside down. And then you awaken to that. I did. I loved it. What parts did you awaken to that you thought, okay, I'm underwater, I see this, and that is actually not that beautiful? Maybe what part of that old world wake up was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
So this is a midway answer, and it ties into what I was just saying about people just naturally understanding the tie between them and helping one another. What happens when you're the white dude is you're a celebrity, and it's exhausting. So exhausting.
Totally, 100%.
And if you ever want to know what being a celebrity is like, go to West Africa. You'll learn.
Then you'll feel bad. You'll feel sad for Brad Pitt.
Yeah, really.
No, I know. I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. But what happens is it's not only celebrity status, but it's rich man status. And rich men in the U.S. are just resented. And like you're like, that guy's just rich. Like what a dick.
Yeah, right.
In Sierra Leone, it's like you're rich, which means you give me things.
By the way, this is fascinating.
It's really interesting because it's almost like we have this dumb paradigm in the West, which is capitalism, socialism,
right?
Or capitalism, communism,
right?
And both imply a governmental system of control.
Mm-hmm.
in West Africa, you could say it's like uncontrolled socialism, maybe, because I realized after a long time, it wasn't just my skin color was the reason why they would ask me for money or ask me for help or, want me to be their friend. I realized they're doing the same thing with all the paramount chiefs, the same thing with people of status, the heads of the household, the doctors and the families. If your brother is a doctor and you have two other brothers, sorry, they're not working that hard. They're not doing
but they get the money.
Because it's implied like, oh, well, we have a brother who's doing really well. Like he's going to be giving to us. And the brother who's doing really well, like he's going to do it because it's just how it works. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it was difficult to come to that realization that like I'm not that special. It's just like maybe I do have an obligation.
So some sociologists, political scientists in America will call that class. But I had a hard time with that in my deep immersion in West Africa, definitely in Mali. Mali is a more structured Muslim country than Sierra Leone, where you guys worked. But I've been to Sierra Leone many times. There's a lot of similarities. The most fascinating thing is what you said, is it's already been determined that the reason that you became rich was to give. You're not rich because you earned it. You're rich because the focus or the attention of wealth is on you because of your blood, because you got the best fields from God. There's a lot of reasons you may be it, but it's not relevant to the fact that now you give. And you and I walked into that situation thinking that it's fully because we're white. That's definitely part of it. But we're like
because they've seen white people before. It's not just an arbitrary.
Right. It's not arbitrary. They also, whenever they see an American movie, they notice, wait a minute, they all have air conditioning and nicely like drywall. Right. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, well, they must have a lot. So we get all that. But the deep part of the emergent conversation is when you scratch, you realize that's what real, and I don't call it communism, I call it communitarianism. That's what real communitarianism looks like. The impulse is already in the people who have already imbibed the culture. They're not deciding to give. They give because it's the outcome of how they were raised. It's who they are. And I find the angriest Americans today who want the most community, it's an ideological imposition on the culture. You have $1 billion, you should be giving. But Bezos, or pick the person who has $1 billion, they've grown up in the exact opposite ethos.
Should we do Roe v. Wade right now?
We should do Roe v. Wade. It just came out on this.
We shouldn't get into it, but it is interesting to think if a policy is completely anti-culture, because I don't think our culture in America is necessarily all rooting for Roe v. Wade.
So
if a policy,
keep going. I see where you're going. It's the same.
I mean, the question is, how are you going to implement that, or to what extreme are you going to implement anti-abortion?
So let's be really clear. You're making a distinction that if you try to implement a type of communism or communitarianism, let's leave communism out. I love communitarian when it's a natural thing.
Distributism,
subsidiarianism. I can't say it, but it's the same. If that was natural to American culture, I think we'd have a better culture. Personally, we'd be poorer. But anyway, just to stick to your idea, to force people into a mindset right now to become communitarianistic, let's say, could have some really bad outcomes. And you're saying that 51% or whatever it is, opinion about Roe v. Wade is now being reflected in the Supreme Court. And now this 51%, let's just call it that, is now going to inflict this on the other 49%.
And it's not an inflection. I mean, it's the decision up to the states. Right. But at the end of the day, it's like, how much force are you willing to use in your policy for something that's good?
This is the great question. So some people would argue this. Now we're going to sound like people are going to come at us right now. You ready?
I actually didn't want to go to Roe v. Wade.
Let's just do it for 1 second, and then we can do something else. But we got one other question for you. Just do it for 1 second for me, because as a historian, many people argue this is why we had a war with slavery. Is that the majority was beginning to understand that this slavery of the South was actually outside the bounds of any type of even Protestant Christianity. like, we've been told a lot of lies for the last 150 years about what's happening to Africans in slavery. And we need to wake up to this, right? We being the majority, great majority of Americans, Southern and Northern. But what happened was, as that awakening was happening, you could argue it wasn't, but you had these very, very powerful Eastern bred, Northeastern bred abolitionists with a very particular Christian voice. It comes right out of the puritanical Northeast of Boston settlement at the time of the Puritans. This voice became the voice of the, how should we say, the easygoing 57%. In other words, the 57% who now wanted to abolish slavery was being led by this 19% of loud, screaming abolitionists. And so every time everyone was like, well, let's look at this, the abolitionists would go, one more day of this, and you are all going to hell. And eventually, the politics became so polarized that they had to kill each other. They had to, because you couldn't say like slavery's wrong, and also maybe there's another way. You'd be scumbag loser, scumbag, you're a scumbag, you don't care about people. I probably would have been one of those. I'm just saying, I would have been screaming and yelling about it. I'm not saying it's good or bad. This Roe v. Wade may be a similar story, which is, I don't know any Orthodox Christians or really anybody sort of in the traditional Christian storytelling narrative who's like, yeah, let's just give it a couple more years. Like, they can't talk like that.
Yeah.
It's just like another 1.3 million dead babies.
Yeah.
You can't say that. And you shouldn't say that. But what's the other alternative? 500,000 dead American grown men because we fought a war about it? Whoa. I don't know what that's got to do with immersionship.
Can we get back to the thing really quick? The whole idea of why this immersion.
Do we still have a podcast now?
Should we just start over?
No. I know, we gotta leave it. Andrew, don't cut that. Hi, Andrew in Russia.
Can we change the whole paradigm of why are we talking about rabbits?
No, keep going. So
why are we talking about Roe v. Wade? No, I'm kidding.
Andrew, laugh track there, because that was actually funny.
So I like this. I like your idea of the immersion series, because our sort of tagline with First Things is that creation begins with sacrifice. And it's a principle that I'm not studied in many religions, but certainly it's like the cornerstone of orthodoxy. It is what the mother of God is. Thou who without corruption gave us birth to God the Word, without defilement. So the idea is that the mother of God did not seek after worldly pleasures, worldly pursuits, and became the most pure receptacle to receive the Creator, like the Creator into creation.
And while being called a whore in the world.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have a husband.
Right. So I think I like your idea, because if you ask people what the sacrifice is or the immersion that takes place, and if they've come out of it, if they went into it with hope, and if they went into it with the idea that there's something to be learned or gained on the other side, then this pattern will emerge of creation that begins with sacrifice. So I like what you're doing. It's cool. And can we tie it into First Things?
I like that you did it. And we're all doing it.
Well, I learned from that. Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah. No, we all do, though, man.
Yeah.
And this is I think that pattern takes place it's a potential for every human life. Everyone who does something called expend energy has the potential to do it in right order, which is, I think, this way that you're describing, which is to take the hit in order to, well, a seed has to go into the ground and die before it can come out of the ground. This is how it works.
Yeah.
It's like the reality.
I was at this conference in LA. Do you know Father Maximus Constas?
Yeah.
He had this funny line. He's brilliant. He said something like, scientists are discovering something these days. They're discovering that actually the process of death takes a long time, a whole lifetime, in fact.
He said that.
It's really good. Well, like no one gets out of this thing alive. And the whole Orthodox concept, at least, is that you defeat death by death. And a sacrifice is required of you to become truly human or truly divine.
But then look at the implications. You defeat death by death every day. That's what marriage is. It's the defiance of death machine. Because through the death of your ego, year after year, you are defying death in the way that you becoming an eternally acceptable being. In other words, my spiritual father used to always say, you're going to be known in the world to come the way you're known in the world. So if you die little deaths to your ego for 50 years or 12, if you die at 12 or 70, then you're becoming acceptable in the next world, because that's what the next world physics looks like. The physics of the world to come look like destroying death through death or through humility. So if you become more and more humble, you actually start to participate in the world to come now, because you're becoming like the thing which you're meant to be, which is wild if you think about it. It's like jumping into the water, recognizing the world there, but then seeing even deeper in the water another hole or another passageway, and passing through that death into like the ultimate place of life, which is nuts if you think about it. So jump in now, acquire a little bit of the understanding, so then when it happens to you, this worldly death, you're right side up. And here's the other thing that I love. He used to say, and God can smell you. Think about that. And I love smell, because smell feels like we're not in control of it. You like,
sound like God read the book that you wrote.
God can see the muscles that I built.
Right.
Like I went to the gym 12 times a day, you know. Yeah. No. You just smell, dude. Like that's just
you can't manipulate your own smell.
God just goes and just smells you. Yeah. And you're like, no, but hold on, let me fix that. You're like, nah, that's just cologne, bro. I already smell who you are. You know what I mean? And I think the process of immersionship is acquiring a smell. It's being able to sweat properly, you know, and like that's good sweat. And then I think there's something so cool that idea. I don't know that it's a rational idea. But.
So I have a hunch. That when you created First Things, you didn't realize. You had no idea how, I don't know, in line it all was. I think
Peace Corps.
I think you got lucky is what I'm trying to say.
Dude, 100%. No, you got to understand. Yeah. The parts and pieces of this thing are Peace Corps, and then working in Georgia with IOCC, but then also getting married. You have to understand, getting married is all in the same process. And then having kids, watching a wife struggle to actually birth a child is uncomfortable, dude. And then kids are the worst for me anyway. I struggle with ages 0 to 3.
You hate kids?
I love kids. But for a person who loves the ideas of life, like you're going to struggle too. A little 1-year-old, a little 2-month-old's not talking to you about the ideas. They are like the idea. They are the actually manifestation of struggle for me. It was hard. Like, so what do I do now? I used to hold Georgie. Georgie was the worst. And because I started to get nervous, I would sweat. And then she would feel my sweat and start to scream. She's like, this dude's sweating.
Yeah.
And then I would try to like fix it, but I couldn't.
It's almost like she's smelling you.
It's the same.
You can't.
She smells literally my arrogance and she smelled my selfishness.
It's like bees. The Sierra Leone taught me that. If you know that if you go around a beehive, they can like sense you. They sense if you're nervous.
Yeah.
And if
then nervous, they want to bite you.
Come out and sting you. Yeah.
They're like bullies.
Yeah.
They're like bullies. By the way, which may not be a bad thing. That's another conversation. So how would you leave this? I think.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Because I think you got lucky with First Things. Because for me.
But there's a lot of people involved, not just me.
It's the. I would not have kind of even close to understanding some of these patterns without just getting lost in it and all these things happening. But if you think about the 3 things that take place during Lent, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, each of those is a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And each of those sacrifices is necessary for a work to take place.
That's right.
And I think you took this risk because what on earth were you thinking starting a nonprofit? Like there's no, it's not a business. There's no income. But you did the most old world thing, which is saying maybe individuals will not only sacrifice to go overseas, which you'd experience, but maybe individuals will keep this thing alive by sacrificing their resources, their time as board members.
Yeah.
First things wouldn't exist without sacrifice from all these different kind of parties.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, prayer, like, I didn't.
But but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I didn't know what prayer was until I was turned upside down. Like, this is actually doing something.
Again, for the rational modern mind, prayer is the ultimate being. What am I doing here? I'm trying to quiet my mind. That's the biggest muscle I have. That's how I was trained for 30 years, is to think like a mind, to think like a rational doer of ideas. Like I always joke, the best phrase for Americans is doer of ideas. They take an idea and just do it. They're not even putting it up against the community or putting my idea, done, victory. But then you look around and you go, yeah, way to go. You built all these massive, like, industrial suburban parks. And now look at the people in them. Yeah, you built them. But how is everybody doing inside your little mouse houses? Like, how's it going? Yeah. That's a little scary, because there's idea, then there's doing it, and then there's also spiritual reflection on outcomes. I don't know if we do a lot of that.
Do you ever feel bad for the founder of Arby's?
No.
Like, when
I have not felt bad for
you.
that.
Never thought about that? First of all, when's the last time you went to Arby's? Do people go to Arby's?
People. Or just want to apologize right now to anybody who goes to Arby's.
Sorry.
By the way, I have gone to Arby's, and you know me, I'm a sucker for bad food.
Me too.
Are you? Because of the price? Because First Things doesn't pay you?
That's fine.
Chick-fil-A. By the way, I think Chick-fil-A is the place where everyone goes like, this isn't really a fast food place. You know, yeah, that is.
Closed on Sundays, John.
Yes, they are closed on. I do think that was a brilliant thing. Like,
brilliant advertisement.
You know what? They're like me. Right. Chick-fil-A is thoughtful.
I'm also closed on Sundays.
Which is not even true. By the way, can we take it easy on that? Because where is your position on this?
Okay.
I mean this. When your mom gave you birth, she like threw you in from a high cliff into a pond called America. And then you got used to it.
Great question.
And now we really shouldn't be so dismissive of it on some level.
Right.
It is our environment. It's the one that gave us life. So it's easy to joke because we, in some ways, we got out enough to look back. Everybody thinks they got out though, bro. Have you ever noticed? Everyone's like, America's falling apart. Left, right, center. But what should we be thankful for? Probably everything.
Everything. Right. I think the same thing that happened to you and Molly happened to me, which is I was like, I'm going to be Sierra Leonean.
And then they went and spit you out.
Yeah. Well, I spat myself out. I was like, whoa, this is not what I expected.
Right.
Well,
they spit me out. They used to tell me this.
The crocodile thing.
Yeah. Halini yorobe tojiko no ateseka bambakere. And they would add the de at the end, which is like, you can cut this out, Andrew, which is like, yeah. Which is like.
We had that. That was
we.
Or, yeah, go ahead.
But basically that was so I was speaking Bambara to them, and well, I'm just going to say it now, not so well. And your Creole is jamming. And so when you speak that local language, not the colonial language, man, you get kudos. But I kept telling them, give me more kudos. Because we would play around. You guys can't, I understand that they would say like little stories about birds, and I knew what they were saying. And they would go, I got you guys. And they would go, Halini yoro. Even if a stick stays in a river for 1,000 years, it never becomes an alligator. And that was literally the last sort of conversation I have with Bakri as I'm getting on my motorcycle. He's my best friend there. To leave, he was like, don't worry. I was crying like a baby. Oh, I'm going to cry right now. I really liked it. They took care of me. Oh, beautiful people. But as I'm leaving, I'm crying and I'm like, I don't want to go. He goes, Halini yorobe tojiko no. He's like, don't worry. You're not an alligator. Go.
Oh,
and I rode away on my, just crying. It was cool though, man. It was really cool because he's right. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have a union as a human being, in our hearts. We're of one.
Yeah.
Well, that's the hierarchy, right? we're one person at the highest point of attention where God has created us alike. But you can't deny the differences.
That's another interesting thing about the immersion is you have no idea what to connect with people on when you're not in your own pop culture,
right?
Using your own metaphors.
You're upside down.
But it's amazing because you realize we have a lot to connect on, but it's all the stuff that I think is boring. It's like what is manhood? You can relate to someone on that level. Or what is courage? Anyone who's anyone understands the concept of courage.
That's right.
And that's for me what happened in Sierra Leone is I can't tell you about the latest TV show. And I can relate to like your farming methods because
I used to joke about that. Did you joke about this in your deep immersion? This is like we would always joke about. So this is a rural village with no electricity, no running water, 2 years. And this was in the 90s. Peace Corps they stuck to their guns. I respect that organization, even though now I don't know if as much. But anyway, love them, thankful, wonderful. So I'm out there for 2 years and I would stay out a lot in the village. And I just remember when I would see a stretch like on the calendar where I'd be there for 2 solid months without going to do a project or anything. I would just think, oh my God, because every night I would get invited over to Umu, Dreese's place, Bakari's place, and they would set out the chairs under the stars and that was awesome. And they would brew tea and then they would talk literally about one cow. Yeah. Like, what do you think's going to happen with his foot? And they'd be like, I don't know, but I remember what happened to old Dreese's foot, and Dreese's cow. And they'd go, yeah. I would be like, what happened to Dreese's cow? I could have cared less, but I would like play along, and I'd be like, so what happens in the rainy season? I don't know where we're going to put him. I don't know. And then they would be like, what about the fences? Do you think we'll have enough wood for? And I'd be like, oh my God. This is so boring. Dude, and it would be like 2 solid months. They're going like, Joe McGunn, don't forget to come tonight. And I'd be like, oh, what are we going to talk about? Let me guess, the weather. Yeah, right. Dude, and I tried to do philosophy and stuff. They were just like, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know about that. That sounds stupid.
And then every once in a while they say something that like is like the most interesting thing to you, like, oh yeah, and like there are the gods in the sunset. You're like, whoa, what?
Where are the gods?
Like,
no, they would be like they would.
Like, there they are. They're going away in 10 minutes.
Right. Be aware now. Right. It's time for prayer because the gods. And then you'd be like, wow. Then you try to talk about it. They'd be like, I don't know about that. Yeah. So I always joke. They go, oh, was it really nice there? I was like, nice isn't the right word. No, it was disturbing in the proper ways, right? And I also came back. I did not want to be a farmer. I did not want to live rurally. And now my wife, that's all she wants. A little house.
Trying to do a homestead.
She's just sort of like, come on, you don't even know about chickens.
She's going to go to Mozambique with me when we bring 2 people.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, she actually wants to go. Yeah, I know. I heard about that. Well, so this is our immersion series, man. And so I would say this. One thing is we want people who like Watar and like this podcast and this immersion series. We're going to try to get guys like you to come on, not just First Things, but all types of people who got dumped in the water and got upside down to come on and talk about that experience. But one reason we need to do it is our guys who go and do this, they got to eat. So we're always trying to find the right supporters. And I think the right supporter is someone who loves this podcast, but also says, here's $25, here's $50 a month, here's something to help.
And we should thank the donors right now.
Oh man, I'm telling you, guys are the ones.
Because like I said, it's this organization is fueled on sacrifice in a way that companies aren't. Like, we don't have big grants. We don't have big corporate grants. And
can I tell people about this? Because I'm doing the fundraising. Yeah. Guys, we've had 0 public grants. 0. Literally every bite of plazas in West Africa has been paid for by local people like yourselves who send a little money. We've had some big donors, but they're private. They're people who have done well in life and see what we're doing. And if you're one of those people, consider it. But everything's been private, which I think is not by chance. I would have, and you would have taken a public grant. Mm-hmm. We tried a couple times. I think it's proper orientation because there's something about the fluidity of a private donation, something about the love that comes through a person rather than through a public charity. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know, but one of our philosophies is to try to raise up these local donors.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and come hang out with us. We're here in Greenville.
Yeah, come hang out.
Our restaurant works. That's weird. Restaurant works.
It really works. We were there last night.
Yeah.
Come to the restaurant. We're going to have these things called these KP weekends where we invite everybody in to talk philosophy, go to the restaurant, have a Georgian dinner, and then go up to Appalachia and see some of the work we're doing. That's coming up. I hope you guys will come on that. That's a fundraiser for us. But Daniel?
God willing, KP Journey.
Yeah, those go overseas.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got one in Georgia. We have a window toward the end of August and the beginning of September this year where we have the manpower to take any of you that want to go. We need groups a little bigger than 4, but we've taken groups of 5 before. If 5 of you know, or you want to, if 2 of you know you can go in August, September, even October, and you want to go, we'll get together with 4 or 5 others. We'll find them and we'll pick some dates and we'll go. Right?
Yeah. I think it's likely for this year. I know a few people.
Yeah.
If you guys have questions or comments,
thank you.
John is going to address those in the last 5 minutes.
Yes.
Of each podcast.
Every podcast now will have a portion question and answer, but I'll do it. We won't do it live.
So we have a Facebook group called Why Are We Talking About More Rabbits? You can post stuff there. Also on the YouTube channel. If you post questions, comments there, John will find them.
Yeah. And so let's keep going. And now we're booking for folks who got dumped in the water, got turned upside down, and realized that they could live there for a little while. So, Daniel, thank you.
Thank you, man.
We'll hear more from First Things guys on this. But this is a nice series. I want to thank Andrew, too, in Russia. You guys came up with this concept. So for the immersion ship series for Watar, we're saying au revoir to you and check back in with us as you'll see this immersion ship series just about every 4 podcasts, something like that, where we get a really nice guest or we do something really cool to try to address this idea, which I think is an important idea in 2022. So to you guys, Nakfam Dis.